Hi guys, this is Stephen Adekeye. As always, we're exploring how we can take an eternal perspective on our finances. And I had the opportunity today to speak with someone who shared a situation with me. It was regarding a business that they own. Specifically, they are faced with a decision about exiting the business or buying out a partner, or even potentially exploring even continuing the business as it is, right? We always have to have that option. So option A was for them to explore buying out their partner. Option B was the opposite direction. Should their partner buy them out? And option C was, just continue as is. And actually option D, they consider this as well. So they just wind down the business. I won't go into some of the specifics, obviously, of the transaction or just the thoughts and considerations. Thought it was a good opportunity and example to present how might we deal with a situation like this, purely from a finances perspective. What does our human mind tell us, our brain, our knowledge, experiences, everything. And then, as always in all our videos, we want to explore taking a different view, an eternal view. So, as background, the business itself is profitable. There's nothing amiss. The business is profitable, it's a going concern, everything is fine. However, not a dispute between the partners, but I'll say different objectives. One of the partner probably wants to do something else, no longer interested in the business for personal reasons. The other partner is still interested, right? And so they've come to this dilemma where, the partner that wants to exit, the natural thing would be to be bought out, right? But then there's been conversations back and forth, and even over the course of the conversations, then the other partner thinks, I'll buy the other partner out. That is, the partner that initially wanted to exit has now made a U-turn, considering should they actually buy the other person out, without going into whatever motivations each one of them has, right? The person that I was speaking with, which is the partner that wanted to remain in the business, is now faced with a situation whereby they wanted to continue the business in the first place, right? But they really need the other partner, to be honest, for the business to continue to be profitable. Yes, the business can still be profitable enough if it was just them, but there was still value in having the other partner in the business. So they're faced with a situation where they are trying to determine their next, step, and we kind of came up with these 4 scenarios. One is, buy this partner out if this person agrees. 2, let him buy you out as he has offered. 3, actually just continue the business if it's possible. Like if you guys can find a way to still, work together and all that, regardless of this last 2-3 months that things have not really been clear. Or 4, wind down the business. So anyway, that's kind of where, the person was when they met me, and we evaluated a couple of options. And one of the first things that we did was just trying to ascertain, the value of the business, for example. At least let's even start looking at that, so that, we kind of have a gauge in terms of, does the business, meet any of the financial objectives of this partner, regardless of any option they choose. So the partner, we had some financial objectives already, right? This client of mine, we had some financial objectives already that we had before that we're working on. And one of the first goals here was really to determine, any of these options you choose, it has to meet at least some extent, or if preferably to, as much as possible, help us meet our goals. So that was one of the first things we wanted to try and do. So we determined the value of the business. Let's just say the value that we came up with was about, say, $500,000, let's just say, right? And that was satisfactory. So if they were buying out the partner, they were buying the partner out at that valuation. Meaning, if they were equal partners, they'll be buying this other partner out at $250,000, and vice versa. If the partner was buying them out, they'll be doing the same thing. The partner will be buying them out at $250K. So those are the numbers for all options. And if they're winding the business down, that will be the starting valuation. Most likely they will not get that, right? When you're winding a business down, you will lose some value. For example, intangible value in the business. typically when you're selling a business or winding it down, you are most likely selling the tangible assets, right? Property, furniture, customer list, whatever, but you will lose some value. So with that option, my point is you might not get that $500,000 valuation. So, but for the sake of this, video, let's just assume that they'll lose just maybe 10%, so maybe or 20%. So that option might give them $400,000 or something. And then the last option is just continue as is. So the business, continues to remain valuable. That's kind of like, the starting point, and that was what that was the option we came up with. But after prayers and all that back and forth, this person, my clients, decided that even though they were not the one that initially started the whole conversation, like literally they just woke up, normal going to work day, and then this chain of events started. So it wasn't their idea at all, but they decided now that, they're going to actually allow the partner buy them out. The partner that wanted to exit is now the one buying somebody else's house. It's now the one exiting someone else. They quoted some of their, personal beliefs to me. One of them that they mentioned was, that one of the teachings in the Bible, specifically around when somebody's trying to take your shirt, right? Somebody's trying to take your shirt, your cloak. As a Christian, the Bible teaches us to, willingly give your shirt away, right? The same way Jesus Christ died, sacrifices himself, his life, literally for us as Christians. We have to emulate that. So that's what this partner decided that, they'll give their shirt, and even if the person wanted more, that's what the Bible teaches, give them everything. So if the person wanted just a shirt, give them all your clothes, give them your shoes, give them your whole wardrobe, right? It doesn't make sense. Jesus Christ did not come here to make sense. He turned everything upside down. The first will be the last. He who must lead must be a servant first, and so on and so forth. You get the gist. So that's what they decided on a personal note. So whilst we have that, decision already from a qualitative perspective, that's their eternal perspective that they took on that situation, because they wanted to honor God in every situation. They had prayed about it. They've heard God telling them that, this was the path that they should toe. They wanted to set an example for their children, so many things that they had thought through. And as an aside, working with God is equal to eternal life. So they are living their eternal life presently. Like, Leah, Stephen, hey, if God was here right now, this is what I would do. I think, yes, I wanted to mention about that. So option A, which is if they potentially bought out the partner, right? One of the other concerns that they also had, that also nudged them closer to this option B, which is to, exit the business, right? Was because of just how everything had transpired, the back and forth, the flip-flop. Remember when I started the video, I said one partner went to exit and came to this my client, and then in the course of the conversation over the weeks that passed, that partner had moved positions about 3 times. I'd wanted to be bought out, they wanted to buy the other person out, and at some point wanted to wind down the business, and so there was some loss of confidence. So that was also what nudged them. So option A, they had considered it, but I wanted to really clarify. So I made sure that I dug deeper with these clients. I asked them more questions to make sure they're not just, reaching this decision from an emotional perspective. They probably were tired and exhausted, but I wanted to just dig deeper as their advisor. Let me just dig a bit deeper. So I asked about option A because I knew the business was valuable, but more importantly, even the price they were potentially going to buy this other partner out, right, was at a good price. That is, it was at a discount, was lower than what the business was worth. So it was going to be a good deal. So I wanted to dig deeper to make sure that, that decision had not been reached in a rush. So I focused on option 1, which is option to still buy that partner out, and over that course of that, questioning that I did, right, it was when they revealed to me that they had some concerns, just, with the back and forth. And I told them that we could price that back and forth, that uncertainty that they had, that concern that they had into that option A. And what do I mean? So one of the concerns that they had was potentially that this partner had also mentioned in the course of their conversations, potentially, dissolving their shareholder agreement, dissolving the corporate structure, and some other things that this person felt that if they bought the business, this client of mine, they bought the business, they had concerns that the other partner might, start competing with them, specifically going after the client. So that was also a concern for them, and that nudged them also towards option B, right? But I helped them take a step back and say, hey, we can price that even into option A. That is, if you want to buy them out, you don't have to move from potentially buying them out, right, to, okay, well, I have this concern, and the next thing is you back out and, go with option B. You can still buy this person out, and we can price that risk. So I said, hey, what's the risk? What's the probability, rather, that this person might go after some of your clients if you buy them out? And he said, well, they are the ones that deal with the customers a lot. They're the one that is client facing. And okay, well, that's a real risk. Yes, they did have shareholders agreement to protect against that, but you know how that might not be fully enforceable, yes, to some extent. The person had even suggested, like I said, that they tear that up. So that risk was there, and we assigned the probability to it. Like we said, okay, 50% chance, right? Or let's even say 100% chance. I said, yeah, I took the worst case scenario. We did different scenarios, but for the purpose of this video, let me focus on 100% chance that this partner will go after some of the clients. I said, okay, well, how many clients? Like, for example, what percentage of your clients are they likely to get? And I said, well, maybe half, because I speak with and actually brought some of the other clients, into the business. So I said, okay, great. So if so, let's just work with that. There's a 100% chance that they're going to go after half of the business. So we're going to lose half of the, revenue that comes into the business. For the sake of this video, again, let's summarize that. I'll just use a back of the envelope calculation rather, and say that $500,000 valuation that I mentioned earlier that the business is worth, let's cut it into half. That's not, a technical way, right? I'm just kind of making a back of the envelope calculation. So this person can potentially lose, this is my client's partner in the business, might potentially lose half of the clients, right? Then let's assume that the business will be worth half. That's what I mean. So 500K, we say let's slash into 250K. And I ask the client, is this company still attractive to you at this valuation? And from my perspective, because we're going to be buying this business, like I said, at a discount, what number is that? Well, what price? Like, Stephen, what is that discount? Yeah, we're going to be buying the business at $100,000. So, hey, as a finance guy, I'm like, yeah, $100,000 for a business. Well, yeah, you pay $100,000 to buy out a partner, and you still have a business that's worth $250,000. That is still a good deal, right? And that valuation, by the way, when we arrived at the $250,000 valuation or $500,000 valuation, was very conservative. Like, I used worst case scenarios. So that business is probably worth more than that. So my point about this whole, digging deeper was to highlight to the client that, yes, this back and forth has left you, just created some things that this client was just not comfortable with anymore. And I said, well, let's price that in. And we ended up pricing it in. And like I said, just from a numbers perspective, they were still going to be buying the business at a very attractive valuation. $100,000 for a business worth 250K. It makes sense. But all that said, after I dug deeper, they still stuck with that yes, that's fine. They understand, those numbers and the value they'll be giving up or losing. And that's, and they're comfortable to still proceed. The purpose of, this video is exactly this. To avoid, to help, just to avoid making emotional decisions, not just from a financial perspective, mostly from an eternal perspective. When we zoom out of situations, right? When we're in situations, sometimes we tend to focus on the day-to-day, what's happening last week, today, last few weeks. That's human nature. I do it. Everybody does it. You do it, right? But as we spend more time with God, and we spend more time in the Bible, and we spend more time praying and actually obeying and listening to God, asking Him to be more like Him, asking Him for wisdom, He will give that to us. He will start making Him more like Himself. In this case, over time, yes, He will help us kind of float out of the situation, help us look at things from a broader perspective, help us look at things over a longer time horizon, hopefully over an eternal perspective, because He wants us to have an eternal perspective. He wants us to have eternal life, so that we can look at things from that perspective and, dust it off. God is eternal. God is infinite. God is here and there at the same time. I mean, God is so many things. So imagine him saying that, he made us in his own image and we are to be more like him, like his son, Jesus Christ. So my point is that, yes, definitely it's tough to see beyond, those nitty-gritties of the situation that is immediately at hand. That would be what more than the financial plan that I would have done for this client. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing all the numbers, we did the evaluation, so many things. We looked at how it fit into their retirement planning. The whole works, right? But all that is in the background. Wisdom from God first. When you look back on your life, right? I don't know about you. I remember mostly, good memories. The pictures that we even have, literally pictures that you take, right, are mostly of good memories. Yes, there might have been times that things, you took pictures of times when situations were not so, were not so great. But looking back on those pictures, you smile at them, you learn from them. I'm just trying to say that when you look at your life, from a longer term perspective, right, you tend to have pockets of memories that bring you joy, that even make you feel proud, even if it was of a time that was hard, that was, that had to bring out the resilience in you, right? That's what I'm trying to say, that your mind remembers those things, those pockets of memories. And that's how God is. God doesn't remember all the nitty-gritties. He's more concerned about you and me, right? So I just want to encourage us to also take that perspective in situations that, yes, whilst things might be tough right now, just try and, move out of it. That you forget this. You forget whatever situation you are facing right now, that you forget it. But you remember how you came out of it, what happened, right? Either way, you are good with God. God doesn't care about any financial decision you make. He doesn't care. He just cares about you. So either way, you're going to be good. I'm just trying to say that you come out of it, proud of yourself, happy with yourself. Your mind will naturally remember those things. So, just an encouragement, not to get sad in any situation or worrisome, or allow those things to bother you. Just take an eternal perspective. And by the grace of God, I pray for wisdom for all of us. I pray for peace of mind. I pray for clarity. And most importantly, I pray for an eternal perspective, an eternal view. I've come to the end of the video. I hope this has been helpful to you. Let's learn to not just take a long-term view, which is better than a short-term view on situations. Let's learn to take an eternal view. God bless you.